Hello, this is Kim, and this is a tutorial for my coffee shop Bible study album. If you haven't seen the walkthrough, there is a video kind of going through all of it to kind of show you what's in here. Just real quick, it's a 3-page, like I said, Bible study album, and I tailored it to what I would use for my Bible journaling. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, when we do this one, obviously, because I've used these papers, I will still be using Coffee Shop, but I will be using a different, possibly different papers in the collection. So if you like this one, you can always go back to the walkthrough and see what papers I used for that one. So we're going to start with the cover as always. And so the chipboard pieces, you have 3 of them. You need a front and back cover. This is a 6x8 album. So 2 at 6x8. Put your adhesive on the back, and then the spine is 2x8, and go ahead and put your adhesive on the back. So this is the lay flat method. So let's go ahead and let's start with the front cover. So the papers, whenever you're doing a cover, you go 2 inches larger on the front and back cover. So this was 6x8, our paper to cover it is 8x10. So go ahead and cut 2 pieces that are 8x10. And we want a 1-inch border on all 4 sides. So if I put a template at the top and at the side for 1 inch, that will give me a 1-inch border on all 4 sides. This is a template you can get from Country Craft Creations. You can buy the 1 inch, and they also have, loud noise I made, the 1.5 inch one. Okay, now they also make this one where there's a 1 inch and a 1.5. I just don't have that one. If you don't have those, either just use your ruler or use maybe cut 1 inch pieces of chipboard that you can use each time as your guide. So we're just going to lay this down onto our paper, and once you put it on, burnish it so that the score tape or whatever you're using has a nice hold and it's flat. Let's do the other one the same way, 1-inch border. These score sheets make your life so much easier. Let's flip that over. Give this a burnish. And let's go ahead and lay out our piece for the spine. So on the spine, we want 1.5 inch border on the sides, 1 inch top and bottom. So whatever your spine width is, add 3 inches. So if this is 2, we need our paper to be 5 inches. And the height, we still need just 1 inch top and bottom. So it's 8 inches. We would add 2 inches to give us 10. So this is a 5x10 piece. We want the 1.5 inch sides. So I'm going to use my 1.5 inch acrylic spacer and my 1 inch at the top. If you are familiar with the lay flat method, you can go ahead and fast forward, obviously. But for those of you who are new to this, it's sometimes helpful to see it while you're making your album. And you just bump it up against those spacers. And then just like we did on the front and back cover, let's go ahead and burnish that. Burnish, burnish. Okay, let's go ahead and do the front covers. Let's wrap them. So when we wrap these, we want all 4 sides to be wrapped. And so I always bring my chipboard up and over onto itself, and then I burnish the edges. And we're going to do that on all 4 sides. We want a snug fit. That's why I kind of drag it to make sure that it's tight. And then lately I have been going kind of giving it a burnish also along the edges. So I have a different scoring and burnishing tool for just about everything. So let me get the other one I want. Here it is. So now I just run my bone folder up against the chipboard so that the paper molds itself around it. That just gives us a more defined ridge, and it makes your covers look more professional and neat. Okay, might as well do that with the other one too while we're at it. So I'm bringing it up and over. I'm burnishing, and I'm doing it to all 4 sides. It's just much easier with this method instead of putting together all those long pieces of paper and trying to wrap the 3 pieces at once. That's kind of a nightmare now. All right, let's run our bone folder against the chipboard. Now you can do the cutting, the next part, whichever way works best for you. So you can cut out the squares in the corner to do your wrapping. I still like to angle cut mine, so I miter those. And so I need a blade when I do that. And I also want to, when you cut out the square, you go right to the corner. If you're angle cutting it like I'm going to, you leave about a 1/8 inch distance from the chipboard to the paper. So don't cut it right up against. Give yourself a little bit of paper space that will cover the corner when we wrap it. So I'm just going to use this so that I automatically know I'm getting my 1/8 inch. So it looks like so. You don't have to have that tool. You can just slice across. Just give yourself a little space. And we might as well do both front covers at the same time. Usually I have one cover done and then just do one with you. I did not get one prepped, so I'll be doing both of them with you. And I don't put on my score tape on first because I don't like to waste, and so I don't want to waste that score tape that we would have on those corners we're cutting off. And I have a feeling I'm going to need to get some more score tape. I don't know that I have enough. I know I don't. Let me throw away my scraps here. So I use 1/4 inch score tape, and I go around the perimeter of both chipboard and paper. Yeah, it's running low. So I'm just going to line the outside edges, and I just use my finger to rip off that piece. Okay, so there's the perimeter of the chipboard, and now let's do the same to the paper. And now I am out. All right, I'm gonna pause this and get another roll ready. All right. I always have a spare. So I'll continue putting the 1/4 inch tape around my paper. And I'll go back and burnish that in a second. I guess it would make more sense while I'm on this side to do the paper at the same time. I do use a combination of both score tape and art glitter glue. I always say that it's important to spend the most, or not the most time, but take the right amount of time so that your cover turns out nice and neat, being that obviously is going to hold your book together, and that's what's going to get the most wear and tear, and it's the first thing that people see. So we want a sharp dressed cover. All right, now I'm just going to burnish the score tape down. And I always start with the long sides when I wrap. I don't remember if I started on that side or not. All right, so I'm gonna get my art glitter glue, and let's hope it starts running like it's supposed to instead of being clogged. All right. So I'm gonna remove the backing of the long side and the paper that is parallel to it, and I'm going to lift up a little bit on each of these sides just to get them out of the way. And when you do this, you want to put the glue up against the chipboard and fill in between your tape and your chipboard. So the reason for putting it right up against the chipboard is just the paper sticks to it nicely, and it becomes nice and smooth when we wrap it and when we burnish it. And then, like I said, you fill in between the chipboard and that piece of tape that we laid down. So then you bring it up and over, and you want it smooth. And then you take your burnishing tool and give it a good burnish so that it stays on and has a firm hold. Lift it up and then do that side, and because we put the glue there, it's nice and smooth. Then let's take the opposite side and repeat that. And then if you have any glue that oozes out, just make sure you have either a dry cloth of some sort or a dry wet one, and wipe that excess glue off. Stand it up. Okay, now I have an extra step because I don't take out the squares, I miter mine. So I have to tuck in that extra paper so that it goes around the corner. So I push this little excess, maybe there's a little bit of paper that hangs over on all four corners. I'm going to push this paper down and kind of in at the same time. And I just use this bone folder for that. Like I said, I have one for every little, there's certain bone folders I like for certain tasks. Down and in. Okay, then you just do it like the rest, like the other two long sides we did, by putting glue up against your chipboard. And I just kind of hold those down. They've never come up on me, but I just hold those down to make sure, and then bring it up and over. And I just like the look of that angled corner, even though it gets covered with paper, the majority of it. And now the last one. Hold those corners. Now I am going to do the next cover also. So if you want to fast forward this, you can. but I'm just going to try and do it really fast so that we can move on to the spine piece. Because you do the spine piece different, you only wrap 2 sides, because those wings that we leave open on the long sides are what we use to attach to the cover. I don't know if I said this already, but in the original book I used a different colored cardstock, but because it's coffee themed, I'm going to go ahead and use this dark brown. I think it's going to look sharp. Really, your base paper can make all the difference. The artisan cardstock, once you start using it, you probably won't go back to anything else. It's top-notch quality for sure. It scores nice, it folds nice, it's strong. And there's different weights that she sells. There's a heavy one. There's one that's like 65 pounds for matting. This one's like 86-ish maybe, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure on that number. And then don't forget, we want nice neat corners, so tuck and go in. Just to keep that corner covered. All right, almost done. The covers go really fast. Hold those corners down just to make sure. You'll notice I kind of go along the edges just to make sure that they're nice and square. And because of the score tape on the covers, our cover's super smooth. So if you're using a wet glue, you might not have as smooth a cover. Obviously, you're going to cover it with paper, so it may not be as noticeable, but I like the smooth. So front and back cover are done. Next is our spine piece. This we do a little bit differently. So I'm going to go ahead just like I did before, and I'm going to bring the paper over the chipboard and burnish that. And we'll do that on all 4 sides. And just like we did before, let's go ahead and burnish the paper up against the chipboard so it's more defined. Okay, and since some people like to just bend the paper back on its other side too, you do you. I don't know if it makes that much difference. All right, so to get rid of some bulk, I'm going to put my pin back in so that my glue doesn't get clogged. You'll notice that we have 4 rectangles on the corner. Some people cut out the whole rectangle. I don't. I cut mine at an angle and I take off a triangle. So I go to opposite corners. It takes out the bulk, but I'm always afraid I won't be able to cover the corner if I take out the whole square. And so I play it safe. So now, like I said, we only cover the short sides. So I still like to use a little bit of score tape. So I'm going to put a 1/4 inch strip on both short ends, along with that paper that's right parallel to it, that little section. So when we do the short sides, we are going to have paper that comes on either side of the chipboard. So I do put a little bit of glue there just so it holds on to that paper nice and neat. So just like before, go ahead and place your glue up against the chipboard on this short end, but then also go up about 1/2 inch on each side. And then I fill this in with glue, the whole section. And then when we bring it up and over, we smooth out the top. And then I take my burnishing tool and I tuck the paper, push it right up against the chipboard, and then I go straight out. And if any excess glue comes out, that's when I wipe it off. Okay. Same on the other side here. Push it up against the chipboard, then go straight out. And we want a smooth edge. Other side, we're going to let that dry before we do any cutting. Glue about 1/2 inch up, and then fill in that paper. I smooth out that top that's on the chipboard. I push the paper up against the chipboard, then go straight out. Get rid of any of the excess glue. I don't mind that the glue kind of oozes out because it just means that that paper is nice and sealed. And same way to the other side. So we're going to let that side dry. Now we are going to miter slightly on these corners so that when we attach the front and back cover, we don't see any of the paper. And if we don't line it up just right, we won't see any of this paper above our book. So rest your scissors up against your chipboard and just do a slight taper. So when I say slight, that's how much I did. And on this side, I'll have to turn my spine upside down. Okay, so that's about how much we're talking. And do the opposite side too. And I gotta throw those little pieces away. All right, so that's done. Now we're going to combine our spine to the front and back cover. And so again, I use a combination of score tape and glue. So I'm using the 1/4. I put one all the way to the edge on that wing. I put one near the chipboard, but not all the way to the chipboard. So there's about 1/8 inch gap. And then I put one in the center. And I do that on the other wing also. I do not want my book falling apart. So close to the chipboard, but about 1/8 inch space. Okay. And you want to make sure that you burnish that. All right, so grab one of your covers, and what we do is we place this on top and we push it up against the chipboard and it'll be attached like so. So what I'm going to do is just one side at a time. So I'll take off the backing on one side, and then I'm going to get my glue and fill in. That kind of gives you some wiggle time if you don't line it up right, and it gives it more stability. So I'm just going to run some glue in between the score tape that I laid down. And then I do a fine line on top of that piece that's by the chipboard. And then I just put a quick line on each of those pieces. All right. So I'm going to bend this down. And I want to attach it. Gotta get it lined up right. Okay. Okay, so you can see it's lined up nice and neat. And then I'll open it and burnish it inside also. The glue I have on here, I get glue on my finger. I can't stay clean when it comes to the glue. I don't know why. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and burnish this one in just to make it a little bit easier so it lays nice and flat. Okay, take the backing off. Put in our glue. Just put one fine line on the tape. But on this one, I just go a little bit right on top of it. I'm going to push this down. Push, push, push. When you have darker paper, you do see the shine of the glue more, that's for sure, but it'll be covered. All right, so our book is kind of wobbly, so now we're going to fix that by covering the spine. So when you lay out your I use the artisan cardstock. Some people go straight to their pattern paper. I don't. I always cover it with the artisan first. You don't want to go to 8 inches. You want to take 1/8 of an inch off. So our paper is going to be 7 7/8 tall. Yes, you want to cover the chipboard, but I also want to go out a little bit. And a lot of people like to cover this, all of this, okay? So that it just kind of smooths it out. That doesn't bother me because it's going to be covered with paper anyway. Now, if you want to have the wings covered, then I would say to cut your paper at about 6 inches by 7 7/8. I had a piece of paper that I did not want to waste, and so mine is actually 4.5 by 7 7/8. So mine will not fully cover the wings, and that's okay with me. I just didn't want to waste this paper. And I use the score tape because it lays smoothly, and I don't have good luck. When I use glue, it ripples on me, and I don't like that at all. Now I also have some overhang of my tape, so I'm just going to bring my finger up and over to bring that tape over the paper. I don't want it sticking to anything. I think that side's fine. Okay. And do I have any overhang? Maybe a little bit. All right, so I am going to center it top and bottom. And like I said, mine will not cover the wings. Yours might if you went with the 6 by 8 or 6 by 7 7/8. You know what? I don't think. Will you be able to see that? No. Okay. And I'm just making sure that it adheres real well. Boy, that is close, but you don't see it, I guess. So now I'm just going to lift the cover and kind of push in my paper in that center. Now some people close it all the way. I don't. I don't have to close my book all the way. It's a book. It's not going to be, this cover's not going to go all the way to the other side. So I just bring it straight up 90 degrees. And same with the other one, just kind of tucking in that paper. Okay. All right, let's move that to the side. Again, I want to get my glue sealed. Okay, so let's move on to the hinge and the pages. So you'll need 3 pieces that are at 11.5 inches wide and 7 3/4 inches tall. So our book is 8, but I want my pages to be 7 3/4. And then the hinge is 4 inches wide by 7 3/4 inches tall. Okay, so let's do our scoring again of those 4 pieces. Let's start with the easy. They're both easy, but the pages we just score in half. Okay, let me make sure I'm in. Yeah, let me move this down to here so you can see the measurements. Okay, we're just going to score it in half at 5 3/4. Get rid of my extra bone folders. So our book is 6 inches wide. Our pages will be 5 3/4. So you notice I took 1/4 of an inch off the width and the height for our pages. So the 11.5 across the top, score at 5 3/4. Last one. I kind of go over it more than once just to make sure it's nice and defined. Now our hinge, we're going to place the 4 inches across the top and we're going to score it every 1/2 inch. So I'm going to start with, and I kind of hold it up against my scoreboard so it doesn't move. I'm going to start with 1/2, move to the 1, 1.5, 2. Now if those of you who are new, I do not have wings on my hinge. It's just a hinge and we attach it to the book on the spine only. It does not go over onto the covers. After 2, let's go 2.5, 3, and finally 3.5. So that was every 1/2 inch. Okay. So now we'll take some time and burnish our score marks on the pages. If you bump it up against the side of your scoreboard, you can kind of make sure it's lined up correctly before you flatten it so that they are nice and square. I have the bump mountain facing up when I fold. Make sure it's lined up. So you have your 3 pages, and we'll attach those to our spine. Hinge. Okay, so the hinge, the first thing, you just want to burnish those score marks. And when it's time to glue, I will refer to them as rectangle 1, 2, 3, 4. So I just think it's easier to describe what I'm doing if you're not familiar with making a hinge. So I'm just going, kind of fanning them back and forth to make sure that they are scored and burnished well. So I'm basically burnishing each score line twice. the same time. And I don't think I did this one. Nope. All right, so it's nice and burnished. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 rectangles. We're going to glue rectangle 1 and 2 together, 4 and 5, 7 and 8. So we'll have 2 gussets in the center. On either end here, sometimes when you bring that over to glue with the second one, sometimes there's a little bit of overhang. So what I would like for you to do is just slightly trim a little piece off of the end rectangles. So 1 and 8. And I mean just a smidge, not hardly anything. So this is what I took off, tiny, tiny. And then I'll do it also on the opposite side or opposite end, just a smidge. Here's my smidge. Skinny, skinny. So before you glue, take a look at it and make sure that if you were to glue those down, that you would not have any paper hanging on off from the bottom. So this one looks good. So I use Just Art glitter glue, and I'm going to place glue on the first 1/2 inch. And I always like to make sure I get it at the very ends. I want a nice sealed hinge. Bring it over and burnish like crazy, especially on those ends. You want it sealed, so if any glue comes out, wipe it up. Okay, so there is hinge number 1. We skip the next rectangle and we actually glue 4 and 5 together. So I'm going to go ahead and fold that so I know which ones to put glue on. Fold them together. Okay, and then finally we glue the last 2 together, which would have been numbers 7 and 8. So I'll just put glue on that last 1/2 inch. Push it, squeeze it together. So we have 3 hinges, and the hinges are nice and sealed at that end. I don't like these 2 down here. Okay, so you can just kind of fold them both ways to get it trained that it's going to be turning pages. We're going to glue this onto the spine. Now, I think on my original, I did put pattern paper. Yeah, I put pattern paper first. So you have to decide which paper you want to use. Let me measure for you what size we're gonna do. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to get the pin in my glue. Okay. So our spine is 2 inches. So I'm gonna make my paper 1 7/8, maybe even 1 15/16. Like I want pretty full coverage, and we'll go 7 7/8 inches tall. So let's see what paper I want to use. So I'm going to use the side that says coffee, 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 shop, shop, shop. All right, so let me get that cut. And I said like 1 7/8 or 1 15/16 by 7 7/8. And then you have to decide, are you going to ink? Mine's just a hair off. Yeah, there we go. And 7 7/8 tall. So here's the strip I'm going to use here. Now I am going to ink, especially being as mine is a coffee themed paper and it's dark, so that means when you cut the paper you usually see the white more on the edges, and I don't want that. So I am using Icing on the Cake by Catherine Pooler. I used to use Tim Holtz. I think this has a stronger, I think it covers nicer. I don't know, maybe it's me. And I don't mind seeing a little bit of that brown on the paper, especially with coffee paper. Okay. And let's glue that right on top of there before we put our hinge on. Come on, there we go. I always like to make sure that those edges don't lift, so I want to make sure I get close to the edge with my glue. When I burnish it, it'll squeeze it a little bit, so I don't want it to be so close that it oozes out, but sometimes I don't judge correctly. But all right, is this the front that I want, or do I want this one? I guess they're pretty much the same, so it doesn't matter. All right, let's lay this down. And we want to make sure that it does not go over. So when we close, you should have no paper getting in the way. Okay. Oops, see, I got a little bit up here, but just wipe that off. Now we can attach our hinge, okay, and we're going to center it on here. Now to help me eyeball it, I'm putting it in the right spot. I have these spacers. These are a 1/2 inch, and that's what should be on either side, because this is about 1 inch in width. So I'm going to lay these down just to kind of help guide me when I'm gluing it. And then I'm going to push these inside when I lay it down, and that just helps me kind of keep it in line. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a bunch of glue here. I use glue, not score tape. I never on the cover the ATG gun with that glue tape, because it doesn't last. You'll go to your book in like 3 years and oopsies, it's not together. I use the ATG on cards. I don't have a problem with that. I just like to make sure I got a ton of glue. I don't want that spine going anywhere. Okay, I'm going to push in the 2 sides so I can see, and I want to look top and bottom. Okay. And I just want to put a good amount of pressure on those gussets. I think I have more space down at the bottom, but it's close. Make sure it's in there real snug. Okay. Now you have to decide for this next part, do you want to put your pages in now, or do you want to wait until we have added the pockets and the flaps and all that? I am going to wait until I have built onto my pages. So I'm going to wait until I have my pockets on. For those of you who want to put it in now, I start at the end, and you're going to glue that hinge with your base page open. You're going to put glue on your hinge and lay it down. Now you don't want this page going all the way to the bottom of the hinge. You want to lift it up about 1/8 of an inch so that the pages turn nicer, okay? So when you are gluing this, if you're doing it now, look to see, first of all, that it's lined up top and bottom, but that it did not go all the way to the bottom of that score line. You see what I'm saying? I have a little bit of space right here, about 1/8 of an inch. So you'll put glue that down, burnish it, then you'll put glue on top of this side of the hinge and along the bottom so that it's closed. I don't want to close the top, okay? So you'll put glue and glue, bring that over, give it a good burnish, and notice that I have about 1/8 of an inch away from that score, okay? I always work from the back to the front, but I said I'm gonna put my flaps on first, okay? So that's the end of the first part of my tutorial, is the cover and the pages and the hinge. So then part 2 is going to be adding our elements to the front cover, back cover, and our pages, okay? So stay tuned for part 2.